Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 405 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today, another in the How We Eat series, this time with Matt, a type 1 who eats a plant-based diet. This is the third in the series. It's a new series. We're just getting it off the ground. So far on episode 373, we had a vegan. Episode 400, Dr. Paul Saladino came on and talked about carnivore eating. Even though he doesn't have type 1, he was a good source of information about that style of eating. Today, Matt, who's plant-based, but not for any moral reasons. And there are many more coming, but I'd like to add your story to the show. If you have a specific, particular, or interesting way that you eat and you have type 1 diabetes, I'd love for you to come on the show and tell people about it. Please remember while you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or trying a garbanzo bean. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. And to learn more about the blood glucose meter that Arden uses, all you have to do is go to contournext.com/juicebox. There you're going to learn all about the Contour Next 1 blood glucose meter, the apps that are paired with it for Android and iPhone. If you wish to have those apps, you don't have to have them to use this great meter, and so much more. contournext.com/juicebox. And don't forget to add your name to the T1D registry, t1dexchange.org/juicebox. There are links right there in the show notes of your podcast player and at juiceboxpodcast.com if you can't remember what I just said.
My name is Matthew Faust. I have been diabetic since age 5, which is 31 years.
Wow. It's a long time, man.
Absolutely. And I'm still continued to be amazed at the advancements. When I was 5, I was on Humulin N and Humulin R,
right?
Which when I look back now, I'm just like, how am I still alive?
Well, it was processed, right? It was you put that in and eat at certain times. And is that how it went?
Absolutely. I remember when I started school, because when I was diagnosed, it was a little before kindergarten, and snack time and lunchtime had to be perfect. Otherwise, you would run low. And it just continued. I'm amazed, like, at the advancements now with, like, I'm on Fiasp, and heck, I can forget the bolus sometimes, and I'm still okay. You know what?
I'm interested in that because this might be where I end up saying this, is we tried Fiasp, or however they say it, for Arden, and she's in the middle of it now, meaning she's maybe a vial and a quarter into it. Mm-hmm. And she, as soon as we put it on her, she's like, hey, this stings when you're bolusing. And I was like, all right. And then she started using the word burns. And I was like, oh, now here's the problem. I'm actually better at her blood sugar than I was before, which, without being immodest, Matt, saying something. And so I got better at it, but we're, I gotta say 5 or 6 pods into it, and she says that the sites are sore, they feel bruised, it always stings when it goes in, and I think we're gonna have to bail on it if it doesn't abate. But did you have any of that in the beginning?
Before Fiasp, I was on Novolog, and my endocrinologist was like, why don't you give Fiasp a chance? And I did, and I actually did notice little slight stings. Mm-hmm. And recently I'm on Omnipod, and I'm looping with Dexcom. I noticed my sites for the pods were reacting, and I'm wondering, I've tried every type of adhesive barrier. And I'm wondering if it is a reaction with the Fiasp, I'm not ready to bail yet because of how amazing it is with my sugars. So it's like, do I want my skin to break out and itch my skin off, or do I want good sugars?
Isn't that something? I'm glad Arden's not having a dermatology reaction. I really am. But at the same time, like, she was laying on the floor last night. She likes to have her back cracked. And so she's like, don't touch my thigh. My thigh is sore. And the pod's only been on for like a day. And that is not something that happened at all with Apidra. And it's not like we were bad at Apidra. But your point about the Fiasp is correct in that there's been twice now since we've been using it, where one time it was just like a pod change at a really awkward time. So there was a new pod on going into a restaurant, handmade potato chips and a Belgian waffle with real syrup. And like her blood sugar only went to like 165. And it was, I think that was the insulin. Now, could I have done the same thing by just using more Apidra? I think I could have. And I'm not going to torture her. Like, some people have said the stinging comes and in about a month it goes away. If she doesn't see it dwindling, we're going to have to go back. And it's not like a head down thing. I think Apidra is really great, but yeah, it was worth a try. Absolutely. And we weren't trying, by the way, I guess I should say here before we get into why you're here. We didn't switch from Apidra and try Fiasp because of Apidra being a problem. We were just trying to see, like, we're like finally picking through Arden's health. Like, is there a filler in Apidra that doesn't exist in Fiasp? And would a muscle pain or an ache change or something like that? So it's just a lot of, Yeah,
you always want to advance and even fine tune things. Find you want to live your best life. That's like a human nature. So 100%. If you can fill in and better your diabetes management.
Even when you need a supplement, right? And he's like, oh, I need to take ascorbic acid, right? And you buy one brand, try a different brand too. Like, maybe this brand's not as good as that one, or vice versa. But you just can't do one thing and stop. So anyway, I don't think it's going to last much longer, but I'm glad it works for you. And I do agree with you. For the people that I hear it works for, they all say what you say, which is it seems to act more quickly. And she definitely has not had as many. And again, it's not to say she had a ton of them, but tail end lows, like hours after a meal, they don't seem to exist even at all, which I guess is what's leading to more stability through the 24 hours.
Yeah, the like, if I forget the pre-bolus, which I'm human, and I don't eat on a perfect schedule because it's life. I have a kindergartner right now upstairs doing virtual learning.
Yeah,
wife is 39 weeks pregnant doing a online doctor's visit. Like, I cannot eat exactly on time, so sometimes you forget. And with the Fiasp, it's bam, it's right there for me.
All right, Matt, I'm sorry, this is going to be our first detour. You're missing your wife's OB appointment to be on this podcast? That's my first question. And secondly, and I don't mean to be indelicate, but what does she like, hop up on a desk and open her legs in front of the laptop, or how does that work exactly?
So that part happened last week, the in-person visit. With the pandemic going on, that was the first appointment I was allowed to go to. So I got to see the baby for the first time on the sonogram.
Gotcha.
This is actually an appointment for the unborn baby with the pediatrician of like, hey, it's in here. It's coming out. You're going to see it sometime. So.
I understand. Has that been, well, first of all, I'm glad to hear your wife is not an unwitting partner in a webcam scam. And you imagine the baby comes and you get to the hospital and the guy's not there. And they're like, where's Dr. Phillips? And they're like, there's no Dr. Phillips. But so when did she get pregnant? 39 weeks.
So it is not a coronial, as I like to call them. It is not a coronavirus baby. It was 2 weeks previous to when the world shut down. She knew she was pregnant.
Okay.
So everybody, plays the joke. Well, I know what you guys were doing during the pandemic. No, it was before the pandemic. Right. So.
Well, I hope you're still doing that. But at the same point, I understand what you're saying. You don't want your child wandering around their whole life going, I only exist because my parents were bored and locked in the same house together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I hate to break it to those kids, but that's pretty much why we're all here. But nevertheless.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And it hasn't been a problem for her to do like virtually often and then in person. It's all worked out. Obviously, she's healthy and she's doing well, right?
She is amazing. Yeah, both my daughter and my wife are taking this like absolutely the best possible case they could. My daughter is in kindergarten and she loves it. She is attentive on the virtual learning, and my wife is a nurse and still working.
Wow.
She's a trooper. And she's going to continue. I mean, she might plop it out, taking care of a patient. Who knows? I don't.
Well, I always imagine I saw my wife work straight through both of her pregnancies, and in the second one with Arden, she got home one day and she said I couldn't move quickly. She was in Manhattan, and she's like, I couldn't move quickly enough to get to the subway in time, so I was late to get on the train, so there were no seats. She's like, I tried to stand, but I couldn't. So she sat on the floor for an entire like train ride, and she's like, no one would give me a seat. I'm so pregnant. And she still kept going. And I think that she showed that determination because she thought, if we leave it just up to that guy to make money for us, we're going to be in trouble. I have to keep going. I really took it as more of a shot at me than anything else. But,
Well, I as well am I'm the basic majority caregiver, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
So, God bless the women in our lives.
Isn't that great? Isn't that great how language has morphed over the last couple of decades? I was a stay-at-home dad, and when and that's what they called it, and I was happy to say that. And now you're basically the primary caregiver.
Yeah, it changes. I did not like the term SAD.
The acronym you didn't work for it.
No.
That's so funny. I'll tell you, back then when I wrote my book and stuff around Father's Day, I was like the most popular person in the world because there were very few guys that would say out loud, "This is what I do," and and had any media contact at all. So I was very popular in June. My mom told me one day she woke up and I was on the front page of her local newspaper. And she was like, I didn't tell her it was going to happen, but I also did not expect it to be on the front of the section, Now I'm as I'm telling you, wondering if people understand that newspapers had sections. But anyway, I was on vacation already, and she called me, and she's like, "You're on the front page of like the lifestyle section of my newspaper," and I was like, "I told you, Mom, I'm very famous." So silly. Anyway, so all right, so you have a kindergarten age child, a wife who's obviously more of a go-getter than you are, and yourself. You have type 1 diabetes. Is there any other endocrine issues in the family?
I have an older sister who is 5 years older than me, and she is type 1 diabetic as well.
Okay.
She got it first when we were growing up. So I would have been 3 when she got it. We grew up in a very small town in rural Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So endocrinologists, we didn't know they existed. So we had a family practitioner. He was amazing. He kept up to date the best that he could with what he had at where we were.
Yeah.
And he said, there is no way I would get it. There is absolutely, if I would get it, it would be like getting struck by lightning 10 times. And I got the telltale symptoms. My mom knew it. She still tells the story today of, I knew you had it. I didn't want to pack the bags and take you to the hospital because then it would be known, and I did not want to do it. But here I am, my sister and I, siblings who I was supposed to not get it, and I got it.
Yeah. My mom wasn't supposed to get pregnant, but I have 2 brothers. So it's funny how doctoring used to work. Like my mother was actually told, it's safe to go ahead and adopt, and you're not going to have children. So they adopt me. And then afterwards, like, you don't need to use birth control. And it proved out for a long time. My brothers and I are all 5 years apart, like a solid 5 years apart. So even when my brother Brian was born, they were like, well, that's a fluke. That'll never happen again, which was not good advice because now my mom at, 78 years old has a son in his 30s, because she was all like, I can't get pregnant. Doesn't matter.
Wow.
Yeah. But imagine that was actual advice. Like, oh, it can't happen to the second one. He was probably just playing the odds and trying to make your mom feel better. And it backfired on him.
Yep.
Well,
so now I'm crossing my fingers. My endocrinologist, I'm very good, like personal friends with him.
Mm-hmm.
He said statistically with my daughter, it's pretty low. I think he said 11%. And I'm just like, every time she gets moody because she's going through a growth spurt or, she's like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm like, oh, she's got diabetes. That's it.
Let me check her blood sugar.
Mood change. Every time she takes a sip of water. Oh, honey, she's got diabetes. We got to check her sugar. So I'm crossing my fingers. I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I'm still here, but it is in the blood and in the genes.
I was going to say it's working out for you and your sister, right? Yeah. So, okay. So you're on the show, Matt, because you responded when I said I wanted to talk to people who eat in specific and different ways. And which way do you eat?
I am plant-based.
Okay.
Which I consider basically the vegan eating. I don't eat dairy, meat, but I hate vegans. I will not call myself a vegan. I do not like.
All right, hold on. Let's not make all the vegans upset. But okay, here's what. So let me make sure let me pick through some ideas. You wouldn't eat an egg.
No.
Okay. Is this a dietary decision or is it a moral decision or is it somewhere in the middle?
There is no morals in my decision whatsoever.
Are there any morals in any of your decisions, Matt?
No, none. I still hunt.
Okay.
I deer hunt. I fish. I just don't eat it. So I give it to friends who do.
That's super interesting. So your whole life recently, how did you make it to this?
About 15 years ago, I was a marathon runner.
Okay.
Pre-kids bachelor days when I had 5 hours to do training runs. And I adapted the vegetarian diet, and I noticed with my training that my healing and any inflammation from stress was significantly less. And then I went back to eating normal food, dairy and meat. And then about 2 years ago, my wife started having issues with eating dairy.
Mm-hmm.
So as a household, it's much easier to just drink oat milk versus normal
one
milk.
of you drink out of this carton and everybody's in this one, right? So you make the switch.
So I cut dairy out and I started feeling really good. Like I still exercise daily. I'll run, just not 20 miles at a time.
Right.
I weight train. I'm a competitive axe thrower, so I'm fairly active. And I noticed like my joints, stopped. They're not sore. So then I cut meat out again, and it's just been working for me.
For you.
I like the way I feel. I feel like my mind is clearer. My thinking, just kind of like spry, I guess is the word.
Okay, energetic. Is there where are you with sugar? Do you eat sugar?
I do. So a lot of the plant-based, as they will label the food now, it's like, I feel like it's the new craze. Plant-based. A lot of those can be sugary.
Right.
So I eat sugar.
Right.
And the plant-based diet for me is very grain heavy. So when I initially started eating that way full time, I was worried about my sugars, because grain and whole wheat spaghetti, it can be a nightmare.
Yeah.
As we all know, with spiking your sugar. But with the exercise that I I make the exercise like a prescription, basically. Like 6 o'clock, I gotta do something. I gotta go on a hike. And it's amazing. I was joking with my endocrinologist, and I'm like, why didn't you ever tell me that if you exercise and eat right, that your sugars kind of do what they should? At least for me, I will say. For me, I know that is not with everybody.
Well,
but
no, there used to be this online initiative that I don't think exists anymore called the Big Blue Test, and it just challenged people with type 1 diabetes or diabetes in general, I believe, to go do 10 minutes of exercise. Like, look at your blood sugar, do 10 minutes of exercise, look at it again, and log that. And most people experience some sort of a decrease in their blood sugar, especially people whose blood sugars were, higher. I think I've come to understand it better now, and thinking that if you don't have active insulin in you, you can exercise without dropping. But most of these people had some sort of mistimed insulin in their system, and their blood sugars were normally higher, and so exercising got that insulin working a little better and move it through their system, more efficiently. That's something. So I want to understand what it means to eat a plant-based diet. So you got up this morning and ate what?
I got up this morning. I ate avocado toast with some sea salt sprinkled on it, and the seaweed sprinkles, which I love, that adds flavor to it. And then a glass of oat milk with it.
So you and I had incredibly similar and yet completely different breakfasts. So I got up this morning. I took bread that I made myself. I made a slice of toast, and then I fried 2 eggs, and I ate that with the toast. But I did sprinkle sea salt on the toast. Avocado is something that's in my house constantly. I watch my girls eat it all the time. I've tried it, and I've come to believe that my palate doesn't want. It's interesting. I have nothing against vegetables, but I don't eat them at all, and it's to my detriment, and I'm aware of it. But I am very texture based, not just with my eating, but even like I've noticed one thing about Corona, which is interesting now that some stores have kind of opened up a little bit and people were moving around for a while, that when I walk through a store, I touch everything that I go past. Fabrics, like tops, things like that. It's part of my experience to feel something. And very similarly, if I put a pea in my mouth, it doesn't make sense to me that there's a crunchy shell on the top of squishy and then I'm out. Like it's hard it's hard to put into words exactly what my problem is, but I eat like a 4-year-old. And and it's embarrassing. I am genuinely embarrassed. I don't want to eat plant-based, but I do wish I could incorporate more into my diet, because I end up having to supplement to make up for those things.
Yes, yes. And if you Google plant-based diet, you'll probably get 10 different ideas of what
that means.
It is. Yeah. It means. But from what I take away from plant-based, it is basically the new vegan, except it strays away from the moral ethics of like animals. And if some people will say, well, plant-based, you eat vegan, but sometimes you can eat meat when you want to. So for me, I do not eat it. It would not be the end of the world, like if something got snuck in there. But
so you'd eat a steak if you wanted a steak. You just don't want one. And so am I to understand that it's the branding, for the lack of a better term? Maybe it's not a lack of a better term. Maybe it's a perfect term. Vegan is I eat plant-based because either I want to, or I have a moral opposition to eating a once living thing. You're saying I have absolutely no trouble eating a once living thing. I just don't want to. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. That is my interpretation and the way I eat.
Well, that's what this whole series is supposed to be about. Is about talking to different people about how they eat. I don't give a shit, Matt, about anybody's politics around food, and and I could sit here and make a passionate plea to not, farm raise cattle and slaughter it for food. I think I could make a great argument about that. And I still, at the same time, I did have a really wonderful New York strip steak a couple of days ago. So I could make a great argument for, I think beef in moderation is great for someone's diet too. But not for everybody. And I think this is why you're here, is to say that I think you should eat the way your body wants you to eat. Like, I don't know if your body kind of tells you what it likes and what it doesn't like, right? And what it deals better with. I'm sure there's vegan choices that you avoid. Gvoke HypoPen has no visible needle and is the first pre-mixed auto-injector of glucagon for very low blood sugar in adults and kids with diabetes, ages 2 and above. Not only is Gvoke HypoPen simple to administer, but it's simple to learn more about. All you have to do is go to gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with insulinoma or pheochromocytoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. Everyone's given a blood glucose meter by their doctor, but did you ever stop to wonder if you got a good one? Is yours one of the most accurate on the market? Does it have second chance test strips? You know what I mean? So when you touch the blood and it doesn't work, do your test strips allow you to go back and get more blood without messing up the accuracy of the test? Is yours easy to hold, simple to transport, have a bright light? Is it easy to read? Do you have the Contour Next One blood glucose meter? Go to contournext.com/juicebox to learn more about what I think is the gold standard in accuracy. There's a lot going on at contournext.com/juicebox. For instance, you may be eligible for a free meter. There's information about test strip programs. And it's possible that buying the meter and strips with cash, meaning not going through your insurance, could be cheaper than going through your insurance. All of these answers and much more are answered at contournext.com/juicebox. The research that happens at t1dexchange.org/juicebox has led to increased insurance coverage for blood glucose meter strips, changes in the American Diabetes Association's guidelines for pediatric A1C goals, and it's also impacted FDA expansion of CGM labeling to include fingerstick replacements and Medicare coverage of CGM devices. Here's how it works. You go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox. You join in something that is 100% HIPAA compliant and 1,000,000% anonymous. All you have to do is be from the United States, a person who's living with type 1 diabetes or the caregiver of someone who is. And then you answer these very simple questions about type 1 diabetes. The T1D Exchange aggregates that data and comes to conclusions that help move care forward for people living with type 1 diabetes. I went to the exchange as the parent of a child with type 1 diabetes. It quite literally took me about 7 minutes to complete, and that was the end. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. You could help move things forward too. You can find links to all the sponsors and so much more at juiceboxpodcast.com or right there in the show notes of your podcast player. I'm sure there's vegan choices that you avoid.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that I will not eat those weird tofu-y noodle things that look like spaghetti. I tried them. I'm like, oh, great, low carb spaghetti. Awesome. And I think I would rather slurp down snot than eat those things.
Wasn't good, Matt?
It was not.
I remember hearing somebody, gosh, I wish I could remember where I heard this. They said they were having the opportunity to try genetically. There's a book she just wrote. I'm never going to think of her name. She's got an opportunity to try genetically manufactured meats, and she's trying them in front of the people who developed them, and she said all the people were like, it's good, right? And she was like, oh no, it's terrible. Like I can see where the technology is going, but this does not taste right. It doesn't feel right. Like nothing about it was quite right. I think she was talking about chicken. Like literally like lab made chicken.
Yeah, well, now they are toying around with 3D printing meat, which is kind of weird. It's like,
Right.
I mean, I'm the same way though. Like whatever floats your boat, whatever is right for you, live your best life, do whatever makes you feel good.
Right.
It doesn't bother me, but like printing out meat, I don't know. It's kind of weird.
It seems like a strange leap. I am trying so hard to remember her name right now. I just heard her talking about her book somewhere, and now I am, for the life of me, having trouble. Jenny Kleeman. I found it. So she wrote a book called Sex, Robots, and Vegan Meat: Adventures at the Frontier of Birth, Food, Sex, and Death. Anyway, she was talking about this, and she said, like that just it didn't feel right and it didn't taste right. And not that it couldn't at some point, or that maybe in the future, because right, that's the idea. I'm guessing is that some people's arguments are going to be that more and more people, and you create more and more cattle and pigs and, everything else. Like eventually it'll take more space, effort, and resources to feed us than we can, balance, I guess is the idea.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we just keep growing too. I mean, what are we at now? 7 billion or something, or right. What? I don't even know the number, but
all those people eat every day if they're lucky. And a lot of them don't get to.
And there's a worldwide pandemic, so there might be 15 billion next year. Who knows? I don't know.
I genuinely, right. We could be doubled. It could be doubled in another 8 months. I genuinely don't have a feeling about how people eat, nor do I think that I completely understand the science around, whether cow farts are as dangerous as landfills. There's methane gas that comes from landfills. Is that more than cow farts? Maybe. I don't know. And I think that when you hear arguments one way or the other, you're hearing them from people who, if somebody says, oh, the cows aren't the problem, I'm going to guess those are either people eating meat or people selling meat, and people who are like, it's the cow's fault, I guess don't want you looking in their landfills. I would pretty much guess, how stuff like that
goes. Yeah.
But,
and I think we'll maybe eventually get to a point where everything equals in some sort of magical equalization point. Like your body tells you, the world will tell us, right. Hey, we're out of meat. And then we'll adapt.
Do something else. I'll tell you what, I'll eat peas that day, Matt, and I'll smile. So it's fair to say that if you learned through trial and error that a completely meat-based diet for you, no vegetables, is what made your body feel right, you'd be doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No. Okay. Yep. That makes complete sense to me. Okay. So today for lunch, what are you going to eat?
I will have probably tempeh. I will slice it up, make a wrap. I like how you called it branding of plant-based. The options are just, you can get anything now. You can get, mayonnaise, all these delicious sauces. So you can make it taste very, very good. So I'll probably have like a tempeh wrap with some sprouts and lettuce and maybe a salad on the side.
I cannot be more honest than to tell you that I am vigorously trying to figure out what the hell tempeh is online right now. Hold on.
So it's like a grain-based block of, I don't think it's like maybe it is a meat substitute. But fry it up in a skillet. It's pretty delicious.
Okay, hold on. A traditional Indonesian soy product that is made from fermented soybeans. It is made by a natural culturing and controlled fermentation process that binds soybeans into a cake form. Matt, you're losing me where it says here a special fungus is used. So it's like, it's Spam out of soybeans kind of feeling, like visually, like it's longer. The way they produce it, it looks like to me, but I'm assuming you buy it in a smaller block when you buy it.
Yeah, it comes wrapped in usually like a plastic, and it's like a rectangular shape, and you can slice it. A lot of the fakin' bacon, as they call it, is now tempeh based. Like there's a bunch of different brands now. Some of them have grains, some are soy,
Right.
some are flax. And I will say that it makes you regular. You will not have any problems with that.
You don't need a fiber substitute?
Absolutely not. I have plenty of fiber in my diet.
That's hilarious. And it is very, I guess it's a very natural thing. This is probably a very common food in other countries.
I would assume so. Yes.
Yeah. Because of because it's just there's not much to it but the soybean, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm looking up vegan bacon right now, trying to figure out what that might be.
You would probably, if I made you a BLT side by side with the most luscious, beautiful pig bacon and faking bacon,
right?
Soaked in liquid smoke and fried in the skillet, I think you would be pretty.
I'd be impressed.
You'd be pretty shocked. You would be impressed. Right. Absolutely.
I'm not going to say no. Although this recipe I found says it's made in grapeseed oil, and I am it's funny, of all the things I am very particular about what kind of oils I take in or don't take in. Grapeseed is one of them I don't eat. Okay, so you're telling me that you could get fake bacon to a point where it tasted like real bacon, but you mentioned a lot of different things. Do you make it yourself or do you buy it somewhere?
A lot of the brands now have the fake bacon tempeh ready to go, marinated in a little packet.
Okay.
You throw it in the skillet for 5 minutes. It's ready to go.
Got it.
I do make, I'll make my own marinades with liquid smoke, some oils and spices, and leave it in there to marinate in the fridge. And it's good. I made a BLT the other day. It's one of my favorite lunches, actually. Maybe that's what I'll have for lunch today. I don't know. And I was so impressed. It had the most luscious local tomatoes sliced thick with vegan mayonnaise, homemade bread, because everybody's making bread right now, right?
Yeah.
That's like the thing. I made bread today. And I said, "Hey, honey, try this. You're going to be shocked." And my wife was like, "I'm impressed."
Now, does she eat plant-based?
She does not. She will eat, meat. She does not eat dairy.
Tell me about the fist fight about when the baby started eating food. When did you, how does that, I'm imagining you're a Protestant and she's a Catholic and we're trying to decide what religion, you know what I mean? When the eating thing comes up, how does that work? How does your oldest eat?
My daughter eats a normal diet.
Okay.
We'll get her regular yogurt. And for the baby, I don't care. I'm easygoing.
Whatever. I'm
not gonna, spread my plant-based preachings on other people. I don't care how you eat. It's whatever makes you feel good. If eating nothing but steak makes you feel good, go for it. Yeah. But whatever.
So I couldn't even throw a soapbox in front of you. You couldn't really even get up and preach about plant-based. It really is just about what's right for you.
Absolutely. And that was my decision with eating that way for, my diabetes and for the way I feel, actually. Yeah. It's my mind it feels clearer. I joke that it made me wittier with my wife, I can get to the punch. But she's
laughing more, you're saying?
Well, that's my bad dad joke. I'm hey, I'm funnier, right?
Yeah. I bet you she doesn't agree with that at all. As a matter of fact, I was hilarious the other day in public. Matt, I'm not going to lie to you. There were people around me just gathered around. Everyone was having a good time. And I looked at my wife, and my wife had a look on her face that said to me, "Oh, yeah, hear this one. He's going to tell this one again. Then he's going to roll into that story and then they're all going to laugh because they've never heard it before. And I'm stuck here hearing it for the 37th time."
Absolutely. Oh, we are so similar. Yes.
Yeah.
This whole pandemic, we're not around our normal group of people because you see one at a time instead of hanging out in a circle. And same exact story. Like
Yeah.
my wife's heard those jokes 100 times, and every time I get a chance with a new audience,
You got to whip
it's
it
like,
out and see what happens.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh,
I felt
not this
energized.
again.
I was like, "Ooh, hold on. These people don't know me. This will be good."
The best is when my wife will tell a funny joke and I won't laugh about it, but then I'll steal the joke around friends. And she's like, "Wait a second, that's my joke."
I'm the one that said that, and you pretended it wasn't funny, and then you were probably upset if she didn't laugh when you told it. Yeah, no, I understand how narcissism works. I gotcha.
Marriage.
Well, okay, so all right, let's roll into one more meal. Like tonight for dinner, everybody's having one thing. What are you eating?
I try to stay lower carb for dinners.
Okay.
Because I can eat anywhere from 7 p.m. to 10 because you never know what my schedule is going to be with life. So if I eat later, I just try to stay lower carb. So, maybe a salad with some garbanzo beans and whatever else I'll whip up. I use the Instapot a lot. I'm really big into eggplant. I love eggplant. And I can throw something in the Instant Pot for 10 minutes and it's like this magical dinner I slaved over all day, but you press a button.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
What about when's the last time you had pizza? I'm imagining you'd have to make it for yourself and there's some sort of substitute for cheese, right? But everything else works. So how do you do that?
So pizza, we will make at home because my daughter loves pizza. Sure. She's a 5-year-old. So I'll get the dough pre-made in the bag at the grocery store. We'll roll it out and my daughter can put her normal cheese on it. And usually what I will do is I will just put the sauce down or just olive oil and then put whatever I want on it, like veggies or I do not like the fake cheeses. They have a weird consistency for me. Okay. I have yet to find a brand that I think tastes good. Mm-hmm. So I'll make more of like a flatbread type
and then
meal.
Maybe a little olive oil and vegetables or just a red sauce and have a tomato pie kind of a thing.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Yes. And that's easy because you can throw both in the oven and everybody can eat the way they want to, and it's all good.
That sounds nice. So. It really does. I mean, I'm just trying to wrap my head around because I think the reason I'm asking so much is because I believe that most people's idea would be either A, I don't want to just eat vegetables, or how hard it would be to eat something new day after day after day. But you really don't have that feeling at all. Like you're just.
I don't. I've been eating like that long enough that you just kind of have these meals in your back pocket. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like on one of your episodes, you were talking about bolusing, how you just kind of learn like, well, the moon is at waning gibbous tonight, so I'm going to bolus this, so it's like, you kind of have these things in your back pocket that's like, well, tonight I'm having the eggplant with tomato sauce base with some flatbread. And then you get used to it. It is harder at first. There's a lot of really good cookbooks out there that'll give you ideas because, your diet is kind of limited, but there is a substitution for anything you like that is normal eating, pretty much.
Are there more?
You like?
God, I'm sorry.
Like if you like bacon, there's bacon. If you like steak, there's steak type consistent things. So it's you learn. It's a learning process.
Yeah, I know. Are there more carbs in plant-based eating than people would imagine? Like how carb heavy are your meals?
I think I'm going to say yes and no. So if you eat a lot of vegetables, you could eat plant-based low carb-ish. If you eat the heavy grains and the potatoes and spaghetti and the wheat and bread, you could be very high carb. So I think that question, it depends on how you like to eat.
Okay. So if it's more vegetables, there's going to be fewer carbs. I guess unless you involve more roots and things like potatoes and yams and stuff like that, like there's a little more there. But otherwise, your other options are more flour, grain-based, and which are going to bring carbs with it.
Yes.
So, but even like you could have a potato chip and be vegan. And like my daughter has a vegan friend, and I am fascinated by how poorly she eats, because in my mind, vegan means healthy. That's, my leap. And yet she's the kid who's in the snack drawer more than anyone else, because she's positive there's nothing from an animal in that drawer, basically.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can eat like an alley rat and still be vegan.
Gotcha.
Basically. It is actually pretty shocking what technically vegan foods can be. Like, you would never in a million years think, but Oreos are vegan.
Right.
Am I allowed to say brands?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Go ahead.
Like Pringles are technically vegan.
Well, sure.
So you could eat.
So is
you
styrofoam.
could eat a can of Pringles for dinner, hovering over the sink.
Right. And tell everyone you're a vegan.
Yes, absolutely.
So there is a way for me to be an incredibly unhealthy vegan.
100%.
Gotcha. Well, as long as I can be involved, then that's fine. I could be vegan too. Finally, I could change my eating habits up and maintain my level of. Actually, that's not true. As I get older, there's fewer like junk food, I guess, type things that I'm willing to tolerate, and they just don't. I've come to believe that as I get older and my body gets older, it's less capable of overwhelming the hell that is the poorly constructed food and, things that aren't have any natural ingredients in them whatsoever. I used to be able to eat a bag of Doritos and it meant nothing to me. And now if I see a Dorito, I think, I would never eat that. It's interesting because I put it in my body and my body would fight against it the whole way through. It would just be like, this shouldn't be in here.
Yep.
But that does come with age a little bit. People will find out, sadly, as they get older. You drink coffee?
I live off of coffee.
Okay.
So my job, if you want to call it that, I'm self-employed stay-at-home dad. So I own a mobile espresso business. So I always have the espresso machine on. I'm basically like a caffeine addict. It's nonstop. It's bad.
Matt, I didn't mean to I didn't know if that was something you did or didn't want to share, but I feel like we've hit into something. A mobile espresso business. You bring me a cup of coffee?
So
how does that work?
Yes, I own, it's a Vespa Ape. It's a 3-wheeled scooter from Italy.
Dude, I'm already on your Instagram. Go ahead, keep talking.
Yeah, guys. And I fabricated an espresso machine and all that good stuff on it. Mm-hmm. So I cater to movie sets, weddings, corporate events. Right now, work is kind of dead because everything I do is event based.
Yeah,
there's no movies being filmed, no TV shows being filmed. So, but like I got to do some cool things. I did the set of House of Cards when they were filming it around here. Veep, a few other movies and documentaries. It's fun.
Well, that's cool.
So I make espresso for famous people and come home and be like, hey, honey, Robin Wright today told me, hey, Matt, sweetie, your cappuccino is delicious. She's like, well, maybe Robin Wright can pack your lunch tomorrow.
Say, I don't think she's going to, because she wasn't putting up with Sean Penn. I don't think she's going to put up with me either.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting. So what part of the country are you in?
I am right outside of Baltimore.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow. Well, that's really, I did not expect you to say that. I was just wondering, my thought process was most people can't live without coffee. So I want to make sure to ask while everybody's telling me how they eat, if coffee fits into their diet or not. I've never had a cup of coffee in my entire life.
I call you those weirdos. I don't know how you live. Do you snort coke? What do you do?
I don't do any drugs. I don't drink, and and you'd think I'd be in better shape even just for that. But it's just, it's nature's joke against me, honestly. Now I don't think, I say it on here every once in a while, I don't think I've had the equivalent of a case of beer in my life, maybe. And my parents drank coffee all the time. There was constantly coffee in a coffee pot in my house. I never remember having any aversion to it. Nothing bad happened. I wasn't burned by a cup of coffee at a young age or something like that. And it just never occurs to me. I have an incredible amount of like mental or intellectual energy. And when you stimulate me, it goes way too far the other way. Like I'd be the worst person to be drunk with, I think. Although I'm guessing. And I think if you gave me a cup of coffee, you'd probably like bind and gag me until it wore off. I would go look how fast I talk now. I don't do that. I drink mainly unsweetened iced tea and water throughout my day. I try not to have too much caffeine or sugar, and I don't know. I see everybody loves their coffee. You want to love it. You know what I mean? Like it seems like one of those things that would be absolutely amazing. It doesn't strike me for some reason. Okay, so let's talk about bolusing for your diet. So this morning, avocado toast. I'm going to guess, is it one slice of avocado toast and a half of an avocado? I'm going to try to guess your carbs.
It depends on how hungry I am.
But
sometimes it's two.
Okay.
2 slices.
So what do
a full avocado.
So a full avocado, I'm guessing at around 14 carbs, and depending on the toast you like, somewhere between 15 and 22.
Yep.
Right?
About right there.
Okay.
Yep.
And there's fat in the avocado, which people wouldn't think about, which would probably stretch out your need for your bolus. Is that true? Does this need like some sort of an extended or something like that?
Correct.
Nice.
Yes. I recently, thanks to you, actually, the podcast.
Oh, well, hold on. Slow down. Yeah. Speak clearly. Is this the part where you say something nice about me? Go ahead.
Okay. Yes.
Go ahead. Take your time. Let me be quiet.
I recently, went on loop from listening to the looping episode, I think with Katie DeSimone,
right.
Who is amazing. And I joined the Facebook group. So now with Loop, it's a new way of thinking for me as a diabetic, because the last 30 years, I thought differently, basically.
Tell me.
So now, instead of being like, okay, this meal has 40 carbs, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to bolus for that. I did this advanced diabetic ninja trick that has been working amazing for me, where I will bolus like half or 3/4 of the suggested bolus that Loop tells me to, because I never know what I'm going to do outside, like if I'm going to do yard work. So like previously you'd have all this insulin on board and that's it. You got it. It's there. You're getting it.
Yeah.
Where now with Loop, I can do like half of what it suggests. I can go outside and mow or pick up sticks in the yard or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And Loop kind of, because it adjusts every so often, like every 5 minutes it makes a decision.
Well, it
kind of equalizes itself out, where I don't go too low or too high.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's
and
excellent.
I'm actually going to try to do the auto bolus branch coming up. I've heard great things about that.
I recommend that one.
Okay.
Yes, for sure.
I made the Loop at the beginning of the pandemic. It was like, how it is. I was all nervous. I sat down, I read all the documents, and I have yet to update it because I'm like, I don't want to lose something great that I had.
Well, the great thing about that auto bolus branch, in my opinion, is that it really, the only difference in it is that there's a switch to turn the auto bolus off or on. So if you put it on and you hate it, just shut it off, and you still
shut it off.
And you have the old version then, like that, or the functionality at least of the older version, which isn't older. It's still being updated, and I think it was just updated recently, actually, and people use it all the time with a lot of success. So the podcast has been helpful for you. How long have you been listening to it?
Probably about a year.
Okay.
I would make it my daily habit when I did go to the gym. I would play an episode and run on the treadmill and lift my weights. And
that's excellent.
But yeah, it is. I have to thank you. It's a new way of thinking. Honestly, it's like I like to joke with my friends, being like, "Yeah, I'm an advanced diabetic." I listen to a podcast.
I think we're going to start calling you all juicers or something like that. That might be funny. Well, first, that's very kind of you to say, and I appreciate it. I steadfastly maintain, if you were to talk to me privately and I wasn't being goofy for this, that I shared some tools and you're using them. It's all you. You know what I mean? Like, you just heard ideas you hadn't heard before. But the reason I enjoyed hearing that from you is because you've been diabetic for so long. And everyone I bump into wants to immediately say, oh, your podcast must just be listened to by parents of kids with diabetes, because those people, you know, they're more careful or they're more involved or blah, blah. And I'm like, no, it's about 50-50. I have adults living with and parents of, and I get to see that actually because of the private Facebook group. When people come in, they say what their relationship to diabetes is, which is incredibly helpful for me to know who I'm talking to. And I'm not surprised by it. I'm surprised by how many people are surprised by it, that they don't recognize that the way insulin works is the way insulin works. It'll work for you the same way it works for my daughter. And people are different within, of course, there's small variables and some people are different and there's outliers and everything, but most of people, it's the same. Insulin goes in, it has a certain amount of time before it works. You're trying to balance that insulin against, you know, the action of the food, and you're just trying to make this, you know, a fair fight between the food and the insulin. That's not specific from me to you or from you to my daughter or anything else. So
absolutely.
I'm always a little weirded out when people are like, oh, that's just for kids, right? And I'm like, why do you think it matters? Timing your bolus is just important for children. Before we move on, and please do be honest, and I'm being serious to be honest, in your mind, who's more famous, me or Robin Wright Penn? Go.
Oh, you definitely.
It is definitely me. No, I mean,
it's definitely.
She's a better actress, but I mean, for you personally, I'm more important. I think that's right.
She's better looking. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, absolutely gorgeous woman, but I can't compete on that level. But I think at least, I don't know if more famous is the right way to put it, but I am definitely more important. I'm saying in a rowboat situation with a leak and one of us has to go over to save two others, Robin Wright Penn's in the water, right?
Oh, 100%.
100%.
She never taught me about, you know, loop or anything like that. So
who's going to help you bolus for those coconuts when we get to the desert island? I got to be honest with you. If you don't push me out of the boat immediately, I'd even be disappointed. I'd be like, what's he doing? I'd push you out and get her back. Nevertheless. All right. So prior to looping, bolusing for your way of eating, anything special people should know about it?
My bolusing worked fairly the same. You know, I would pre-bolus before a meal.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference would be, like I said, you would bolus and you could cancel a temp basal on the Omnipod, but it didn't make the decisions based on what you were doing,
right? What
is what I love loop for. Like, if I get on the treadmill and forget to do a override,
mm-hmm.
that, hey, body, I'm exercising, loop most of the times figures it out. Like, after like 10 minutes of running, it's like, dude's doing something.
His blood sugar's falling.
We better cut. We better start cutting. And it's very, very seldom that I'll go and drop to where I have to get off and drink juice or whatever.
Have a Starburst, which I see you have Starburst on your desk for our conversation today.
That is my go-to. It's quick and
you know, I never ask people, but and I don't see most of the people. You just have a great internet connection, so we're looking at each other, but I don't see most people while I'm recording, which I'd like to change in the future maybe. But I can hear people eating and checking their blood sugars in the background. I never mention it. I wonder if people listening can hear it. Like sometimes you'll just hear like, you know, like there's a click in the background or something like that. I'm like, somebody's checking their blood sugar right now. Or you'll hear a little fumbling around in some wrappers or something. And I leave it in the show because I think it's interesting.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
It's real life. I mean, that is what we deal with. So it's like, you know, why?
Might as well hear it, right? Okay. So bolusing, you were just using a lot of the skills from the podcast. You were doing temp basal increases and decreases and spreading out insulin and that kind of thing, just lining up insulin with the impact. And that was working. But what you like about Loop is that it can take basal away when it sees you getting low. I think that's a no-brainer. I think that whether it's Tandem, whatever their loop system is called, IQ or something like that, or if it's going to be the forthcoming Omnipod 5 or Medtronic's got another one coming out, next year. I think that everyone who wants it and can afford it should at least try it. I think you should think about it the way we thought about Fiasp. Like, all right, well, let's see what this does. Because maybe you're going to have a great experience like Matt did, and it'll change your life a little bit. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I recently, my endocrinologist was hanging out with me at my house. We're buds. And I showed him the Loop. And like, you're not going to make me stop coming to see you, right? Because technically it's not FDA approved. And
right.
And he's like, no. Like, and we were both discussing, and I think within the next decade, pretty much every diabetic will be on a looping system. It's the first thing to happen. That's a huge advancement. To me, it's like I say, I'm 3/4 cured.
It feels like it sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
How like stable your blood sugars can be.
I rarely go high. The only times I go high is things that are out of my control, like a bad sight or, whoops, I forgot to bolus. It's all on me.
Right.
So it's amazing.
That's Arden's blood sugar for the last 6 hours.
Beautiful.
Like,
don't you love it?
Yeah. It's between 80 and she hit 120 for a second. I'm going to be honest with you. What happened was she got out of bed and she went and got cleaned up and got ready for school. And I know she walked away from the Riley link.
Yep.
So right when she started to drift up because she was feet on the floor, she didn't get a little insulin. And I did nothing to fix that. And she rose at 7:59 to 1:30. And by 8:39, she was back under 120. And by 9 o'clock, she was 100 again. And now she's 90, and she's been 90 for like the last hour. So that is that's a weight lifted that, I mean, listen, do you want me to make a prognostication right here? You'll have a steak one day and my podcast will get put out of business eventually by algorithms. It really will. When it ends, it's going to end because of algorithms. I am going to have taught everyone in the world how to use them. And then there's going to be no reason to talk about diabetes anymore, knock on wood. Or we can move on to the
there will be
more
something new that'll hit,
Yeah. Oh, God, please. Listen, I love doing this podcast. I hope something else new comes up that we all have to learn. But no, seriously, like, not that talking about diabetes wouldn't be necessary, because I think there's a lot of benefit in that part of it, too. But just the management side of it, like when you really think about this show over the last 6 years, this show is when you're talking about insulin at its core, me explaining the convoluted way that I broke down how insulin worked and how you can put it into practice in your life and how we have. And at some point, if you have a CGM and a pump with an algorithm in it, it's going to be about getting your settings right and pre-bolusing on time and not much more.
That's the thing too, is like, I like to say garbage in, garbage out. you still have to know that, like, you don't hop in a car and when you're 16 and just go. You have to learn all the how to put the key in and turn it on.
There'll be something to talk about still. Yeah, but it just won't be, I won't be, although, you know what, in fairness, most people are still not going to be able to afford this stuff. And it is short-sighted of me to even say that, because while I have a lot of interaction with the people who have pumps and have glucose monitors, there are plenty of people listening who do not have those things and don't have a pathway to them either. And I think those people are always going to need that conversation. I'm just thinking that maybe I'm wishful thinking that one day it's not going to be necessary for someone like me to sit down and say, okay, now you put your insulin in here and you wait this amount of time. Then you start eating. Try not to eat that first, eat this first, because we want the digestion to and then we'll spread it out. We'll do a nice extended bolus over 2.5 hours, and that should take care of the fat and protein. Like, I'm hoping not to have that conversation anymore. But at the same time, if you really asked me to describe it, I haven't just dumbed it down for the show. I genuinely believe this. It's just there's a timeline where the food impacts your blood sugar, and during that timeline, you have to equally impact the food with insulin, and that's just sort of it. I don't see I don't see a reason to think of it in a different way, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, and insulin always works. You just have to know how to manipulate it with all those variables, which can be like rocket scientists to some people and second nature to others.
I think if you notice when I'm talking to Jenny, I'll use a phrase, when the insulin's doing what I expect it to do. And in my mind, what that means is we have a good pathway for the insulin to get into Arden's body. So a site that's working well. And then I do something, I know what the insulin's supposed to do based on what I did. Like, I'm so aware of the amount I'm using and the timing I'm using. I know what's going to happen. And when that doesn't happen, if there's good insulin delivery, it's easy for me to fix, because the variables that everybody, talks about, there's so many variables. There aren't as many variables for me, but it's just because I've seen it so many times. Like, I don't know if you can see this now, and I don't know what this is going to say because I haven't seen this in a while. So I'm following 5 people's blood sugars right now. And with the exception of somebody who I just started talking to yesterday, I've got 91, 95, a 68, and a 79. And a 91, which is my daughter's. So all those people, all of them are just doing what I do. That's it. And they're all having reasonable. And one of those lower blood sugars is a person who's switching to a pump today. So they have Traceba left over in them, and they're trying to get a pump going. So his little lower blood sugar is going to come up really soon. And there's part of me that wants to, that wishes I could make that public, that you could look and go, look, Scott's following and helping 5 people. I'm just texting with them. I'm not there. I don't know exactly what they eat. I'm just like, now a little more, a little less, turn it up, turn it down. I talk to them for a couple of days. They're people. Sometimes they're people I owe favors to. Sometimes they're people, I just are in such bad ways that I think it's not going to help them if I don't talk to them, or they get into a bad spot where listening to the podcast isn't possible for them for certain reasons. And all I know is you use the tools, use them about the way I tell you to use them, and it works. And that's it.
Yep.
So hopefully hopefully that's what happens. All right. What are the pitfalls of plant-based eating? Tell me one of the things that you really hate about it that you shouldn't even admit to other people. Is there anything?
Well, I would say the social aspect of it. Like, I won't say peer pressure, but like, you go to a potluck or something, and Aunt Trudy is excited that she just made these delicious cupcakes and is like, you got to try one. You got to try one of these. And you're like, I know that's loaded with 10 pounds of butter. And then there's this social aspect of like, oh, I don't want to like make somebody feel bad and be like, well, I can't eat that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That for me is the hardest part. And then like going to restaurants can sometimes you can be that annoying person and being like, well, what's in this? What's in this? What's in this? So we rarely go out to eat. Well, of course, now we're not going out to eat, but when we do, it's to places that I know what the menu is.
Right.
And honestly, with a soon to be 6-year-old and a baby, who knows how often we'll go out to eat anyway. So
if everybody suddenly didn't have Corona anymore, you're still not going anywhere for about a year. That's for sure. So just the idea of it's different enough that it's noticeable, and you might end up like hurting someone's feelings or asking a waiter, like, please make sure you use a pan that hasn't had butter in it or something like that. Like you actually would have to say, I'm completely vegan. Like I don't want any animal-based stuff. And then do you think that people who don't see, even though it's not your perspective, people who don't think about animals the way like a classic vegan might think about it, look at you and like, oh, this soft guy doesn't want us eating a cow. Like, do you think there's that too? Like, do you think people?
100%. Yeah. Yes. I come across so often of like, I very politely say, oh, no, thank you. I don't want to eat your cookies. One, because I'm diabetic, and because I know there's butter in it. And some people just have a difficult time when you are different than what they are used to. It's like, wait a second, you don't eat butter. Why?
Yeah.
Why don't you do this?
And now you're explaining yourself, and you don't want to be telling anybody. You don't need to explain yourself, right? Like that must be terrible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, well, I choose to not eat this way because it makes me feel better. And even sometimes for some people, they can't grasp that either. Like, you don't eat like me.
Yeah. It's no different probably than a lot of, social division in a lot of different ways, I would think. Honestly, absolutely. You're quote unquote too different, and so there must be a reason. There's something wrong with you, or you're making me feel like there's something wrong with me, and then there becomes that kind of like clash. It's interesting. It really is.
Yeah.
Do you avoid telling people in situations where you don't need to?
Oh yeah, 100%. I am not that person of, hey, did you know I'm vegan?
Listen, in a crowd of 1,000 people, do you think you'd have more acceptance telling people you have type 1 diabetes or that you don't eat meat?
Oh, type 1 diabetes.
100%, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I don't know, he's wearing a thing on his arm, but at least he'll eat a cow. Poor cows. How did it happen to them? They are delicious, though. That's the problem. Your meat is too delicious. What are you going to do? I mean, a sausage. Think about a sausage from a pig. Oh, my God. It's so good. Is there anything you miss?
Yes. Like, I'm right outside of Baltimore. I love crabs. I always say, if I break my diet, though, it will be at a crab feast.
For seafood?
100%. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine there had to be something that you're just, I'm interesting when I eat. I don't particularly have, like, you couldn't say to me, hey, let's go here for dinner and make me like, oh my God, that's an amazing thing. We have to do that. I'm not oddly a food person. I do appreciate good food versus average food. I have learned to, like, I use a smoker to smoke some meats, and there's an obvious, it's just obviously better. And there's, I got making pizza, and I'll make the dough myself, and like take the time to cook it at a temperature where it comes up the way you expect it from a restaurant. And I can see the difference in that. I can see if you like cold ferment pizza dough that it digests easier, little stuff like that. But having said that, I would eat a slice of pizza from a boardwalk in 3 seconds and, think nothing of it. And then 10 hours later go, oh my God, I still don't feel well from that terrible slice of pizza that I ate.
Yeah.
It just really, eating's an interesting thing. It just really is.
Yeah. Quality makes a difference. You're right, though.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I hear it. I really do. So is there anything that you would want to tell people that we haven't talked about?
I would say one of the best outcomes, which I wasn't even expecting, were my labs. My A1C has always been, great in range. But like my cholesterol and triglycerides and everything else, I was hovering at high cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
We have pet chickens. So previous to choosing plant-based diet, I would eat like 6 hard-boiled eggs a day. And my cholesterol was, I think, 190, hovering. Like my endocrinologist was like, what's going on here? I'm like, oh, I have pet chickens. And
I don't want to waste those eggs.
But after choosing plant-based diets, my labs were just the best I have ever seen.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my cholesterol last time was like 110 total. And my performance, I'm not anywhere near a professional athlete level, but like running, I don't get winded as quickly. I can go further. I can go longer. I recover quicker. And I attribute it to the plant-based diet.
If you had your exact diet that you have right now, but 3 times a week you had, I don't know, chicken or beef or fish, you're saying that you would feel differently physically, like not as well. I'm assuming like inflammation, aches and pains, stuff like that. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like I noticed my joints would be sluggish.
Mm-hmm.
Like I am 37. Is that how old I am? Yeah. So, I get up and, but I don't experience any of that anymore.
Wow. That's amazing. That is definitely, I mean, I'm 10 years older than you, and I think I'm more than 10, but let's just say I'm 10 years older than you. And I know what you're saying. My hands hurt sometimes and they're achy, and, I wonder what all that is about. If it's just me getting older, if I'm eating something and taking something in that I don't want. One of my last questions for you is, do you have to supplement with anything? Is there anything you're not getting in your diet that you have to take through vitamins?
I do take a multivitamin just to make sure that I get all the vitamins and minerals that I need that might be left out. I get plenty of protein. I probably get 90 grams a day, which for my body is fine for me.
I think it's obvious that you found the way to eat that really works best for you. So I assume that's really what everybody should be doing, is eating the things that make their body perform the way, that it should. So it's really cool that you found it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really is. I appreciate you sharing all this with me and with everybody. I see a very pregnant woman behind you.
That is her and my daughter.
And a cute little girl. Hi, how are you? That's lovely. Well, is that a boy or a girl? Do you know?
We don't know. With number 2, my wife said that we could find out. And when it was time, she didn't. And she gets to make the decision. So
I understand.
We didn't know. With my daughter, we didn't know either. And when she came out, the doctor was like, "Dad, do you want to call it?" And she had her little legs closed, and it was like scratching a lottery ticket off. I had to literally
you had to check,
peel the legs apart, and I was like, "Girl."
That's amazing. That's a nice story. It really is. Well, that's I was supposed to cut the cord, but then I couldn't. Panic situation, something medical. And then when it was over, I felt like so disappointed by it. And it stuck with me for a while. I don't know why with Cole. And then with Arden, I don't know what happened. Now I couldn't tell you for certain if I cut Arden's cord or not. I really don't know. So that's how old I am.
It all becomes a blur.
Yeah. Get ready for that when you get older, everybody. Just going. I vaguely remember being there when a human life came into the world. Couldn't tell you much about it. Really is a delightful thing getting older. Well, I think it's really cool that you figured this out and that you shared it with people. You're saying there are some really good cookbooks people could try, and I think if they're interested in it, they should give this a whirl. It obviously sounds inexpensive. Honestly, it's cheaper to eat this way, right? Or no?
I think yes and no. I think you can eat on a very tight budget, plant-based, and you can eat very expensive if you want to.
So some of the things that are made by companies that are pre-packaged and ready to go can be more expensive. Is that right?
Yeah, and then there are, I think, is it Gwyneth Paltrow has a cookbook, and if you dissect the meals, they come out to be like $300 a meal. So it's like all these rare spices that are brought in from an elephant train from, this country. So,
yeah, I meant for regular people, not people who who read the Goop website. But which we're not going to talk about some of the things that Gwyneth says you should do with your vagina, because I think it sounds unsafe. She's got a very strange website. Let's just say that. Anyway. All right, Matt, I really appreciate you doing this and taking the time. This was wonderful of you to do.
Thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate what you do. And thank you for being there for us. It's
my pleasure. It really is. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. I'd also like to remind you to go to the T1D Exchange at t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Help move things forward. And a huge thank you to the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Upgrade your blood glucose meter game at contournext.com/juicebox. A few quick reminders. Are you looking for those diabetes pro tip episodes? You can find them right here in your podcast player, beginning at episode 210 or at diabetesprotip.com. Have a great doctor that you use for your type 1 diabetes care or need one? Check out juiceboxdocs.com. Has the show been particularly helpful to you, or do you enjoy it? Leave a fantastic 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're listening in an app, please subscribe. It helps the show immeasurably. Hit subscribe now. I'll wait while you do it. Are you done? You got it? Okay, great. If you're looking for an app, there are plenty, and they should be free. Never have to pay to listen to this show. Go to juiceboxpodcast.com. Right across the top of the page, you'll see listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, get it on Google, Amazon Music, available on Pandora, subscribe on your Android, ask Amazon Alexa. And we're actually even on Amazon Music right now. I'll have to add that to the list. And we just got added to Audible. So if you listen to a lot of books on tape, I guess that's how you still talk about them, even though there's no tape involved. You can also listen to the Juicebox Podcast right there on Audible. There are a bazillion great ways to listen. None of them should cost you anything. You should not have to pay for a podcast app. Again, those are right at the top of juiceboxpodcast.com. While you're there, check it out. There's a lot going on there. You can get a link to the private Facebook group. There's a great A1C and blood glucose calculator and conversion. It's really wonderful. Made by a listener. You can put in mimimoles, right? Like say you're in Europe and you're like, listen to the podcast and people are saying, my blood sugar was 120. You can type in 120, click on MGDL, and it tells you that over there in the Europe, that means 216. It even tells you what your average A1C would be if that was your average blood sugar. It even has an A1C thing, right? So you can put in your A1C of, my A1C is 5.5. Oh, well, that must be an average blood sugar of 111 if you're in the Americas, or on other places, MMOLL 6.2. It's a really cool little calculator. It's absolutely free. Check it out right there on juiceboxpodcast.com.